I am going to go ahead and begin because I said it's going to start at 6 and I want to end by 7 or sooner. So I want to thank you for coming tonight to hear a little bit about what is it that we're doing here. So tonight I will go through kind of our whole process of where we started, why we're asking what we're asking, and why, basically why we put this question on the ballot. So starting off, just some background information. Our newest building addition to District 91 was the Calvin Grove Junior High wing. So that is the wing right off to the side there, and that was built in 2000. Some background on the bonds for that. That project was actually done with a matching grant from the state. So the original bonds that were purchased, we purchased them, but they were matched 50-50 with the state. So it was a very, very fiscally responsible time to jump in and do one of those school construction grants where they got 50% of that project paid for by the state of Illinois. So with that addition, currently that is going to be falling off in 2023. What that equates to is roughly 22 cents on the current tax rate. That portion right now at 22 cents is roughly $400,000 to the district. So it's not a very large amount, but it is still a significant amount that helps us looking forward. And again, it's just like owning a home. We're paying off that junior high wing. That junior high wing is going to need a new roof within the next 3 to 5 years. And the board has approved that limiting rate increase to be on the ballot on November 8th, and that's why we're here tonight. So the original structure of Calvin Grove was built in 1951, and that is your 4-5 hallway with additions coming out 1958, 1965, and then 2000, and that's the one we just talked about. At Millen Grove, it was built in 1969, and that is it. It is still the 1969 building. Other than life safety projects at Millen that were required, there hasn't been any updates. So yes, over time, we've scrubbed down the floors, we've added some paint, but there's been no renovation since that original 1969 structure. During the 2021 school year, and I wanted to share this, we spent locally $105,000 on 2 new boilers. That again was a matching grant. If we put in $50,000, the state, there's a school maintenance grant out there, they would put in $50,000. What happens there is our director of buildings and grounds, Mr. Pearson, came to me and said, one of our boilers is broke and I don't know if it's repairable. And I said, well, how often have we been fixing this? And I started looking back and I looked at the maintenance cost, that routine maintenance cost that we had been committing to the cost of our boilers over the last 3 years, and it actually paid for one of the boilers. So when I saw that, I said, okay, we're switching gears quick. We're using that school maintenance grant so we can get new boilers. Well, one of the boilers was pretty much going down. We were surviving on 1 boiler. Now, anyone knows if you have no heat in the dead of winter, you have to close school. So again, my first year in my seat, and I should have said this is year 2 for me. I'm still getting to know the staff. I haven't even known them for a year with their faces because I only saw masks for the first 6 to 7 months. So you can imagine my first year, I'm like, okay, we already have a pandemic. Now we have the possibility of a boiler going down in Calvin Grove, and that means I won't have heat. We are not going remote. So we did an emergency approval where we approved 2 brand new boilers, and you can see them over here on the right. The old ones looked like steam engines. They were huge, they came out, and we put in these 2 new, very efficient systems. I will tell you, just the efficiency on them, we will make our money back.
This is a building.
This is here, no, this is a Calvin. So these 2 right here are heating all of the 4-5 and into the pod, some of the pod, not all of the pod. So it's not the junior high wing, this is the 4-5 wing. But with this, the efficiency on them is way better than what we had before, and we will make our money back starting after about 18, 19 months. So what we started doing is saying, okay, we know this bond is coming off, but if this bond is coming off and we have this money there and we even want to think about going to our community and saying, can we just maintain, we need to make sure that there's a need, because we're not going to do anything unless there's an absolute need for it. So what we did is in April of this past year, we completed an architect RFQ. So what we were doing is requesting for qualifications of different architect groups. And then in May, so we went through the interview process. In May, we ended up approving our new architect firm, DLA. So Brian Scully is here on behalf of DLA Architects, and they started immediately, and that was part of our process, is we said, we want to know immediately, if you are hired as our architect, are you ready to hit the ground running with us right away in June? And they sure did. So actually in May, they were out in our buildings starting to do some of that preliminary work, and then we conducted a new health, life, safety, and facilities review. Health, life, safety is required every 10 years. We actually jumped ahead. We had it done 8 years ago. We still had 2 years to go, but we said we want to know now, what is it that we need to do within our buildings? And then by August, they had presented a summary to the board of potential findings from what they had seen. From that, at that time, they had projected 9.6 million. I will tell you it's over that now that all of our engineering information has come in. But here, what they did is they broke it down 2 different ways. The first one is by fund. So this is how we look at our funds locally. So it's capital improvement, then life safety, and then O&M. I can tell you this life safety that was at 169,000, that's now up around $500,000. Those are required projects that we have to complete over 10 years. So we as a district, we've been doing a very good job maintaining and making sure we're completing our life safety so that we can keep our buildings open, keep things going, and then general O&M, and this is kind of all encompassing of a lot of things at 5.6 million. So when I go into the next slide, this is the one that's much more explanatory of how that money would break down. And mind you, we had them working with us, and I said, I want a 20-year facilities plan. So health, life, safety, that life safety I talked about is only over the first 10 years, but we wanted a breakdown of projects over 20 years. So what does it look like each year out? So you can see here, accessibility, and I don't know, Brian, if you want to jump into some of these, to kind of help out.
So for accessibility, what we're looking at is anything that would have to deal with either the Americans with Disabilities Act or just in general access around the building. Because the ADA is not necessarily, it's not building code, but it is law, and that's kind of a hard thing to understand. But basically, if your building doesn't meet ADA, it doesn't have to until it has to, until you have a student or an employee or a visitor who needs to get to certain areas of the building. So you have to provide for functional spaces on an accessible route, so for someone in a wheelchair or someone who has a hard time walking can get to. But that's what that is encompassed, what encompasses that category. Then building envelope, so that's your roofs, your walls, your windows, your exterior doors. And as Dr. Wilkie pointed out, roofs always have to be replaced. So even the newest build part of the building, the 2 buildings, the roof lasts about 20 years, just like your shingles on your house might last 20 to 25 years. So over time, the sun, the rain, the hail, the snow beat up on those roofs, and you have to replace them or restore them, and so that's what's encompassed in that category, besides, like I said, windows and doors as well. Finishes, that's the carpet, the ceilings, the paint, anything kind of within the spaces that, again, just like your house, sometimes after a few years you get tired of looking at that carpet and it gets worn down, and the dog has dug in the corner of it, or the kids have walked through it with mud about 1 million times in the school, and they've done the best they can, and it's kind of worn out. Furniture, fixtures, equipment, and storage, so that's going to be things like built-ins, like cabinets, things like that. And most of the cabinets in the building are original to when the building was built. So if you can imagine, hardware is kind of worn out if the doors are still there. In some cases, they just don't fit things that we need to store these days. They were made for books from 1965, not for iPads or giant 3-ring binders or whatever you might have. Then then the life safety, which Dr. Wilkie already explained. Paving walks and grounds is just what it is. It's the parking lots, the sidewalks, it's the playgrounds and baseball fields and things like that. Paving wears out just like a roof wears out, so that's one of your constant costs over the years, is always on a cycle. We try and get our clients on a cycle to look at their roofs and look at their parking lots, because those always wear down over time, so always need to be planned for in advance. Security measures. So that is, there's a lot of things the district is looking at. Secured entrance. Millen Grove does not have a secured entrance. When you buzz into the building, you are into the building without having to go through kind of a lockdown procedure. Also updating radio transmission equipment with emergency services, cameras and things like that, just general upgrades and expansion throughout both buildings. And the last one here, that number, this is part of what Dr. Wilkie said, where these numbers are a little bit off. The engineers have not finished up their assessment of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing throughout the building, so that was a placeholder of $200. That is up in the millions of dollars at this point, because we are looking at basically every piece of mechanical equipment in the building has a lifespan as well. So just like your furnace at home, your hot water heater, it has a lifespan and it will run out. So we're trying to plan in advance. A lot of the equipment is actually beyond its quote-unquote useful life. That doesn't mean it's not still working, but its expected life has come and gone. And to the district's credit, they've done a great job of maintaining and extending the life of the equipment, but some things are just not going to be able to be extended anymore because the manufacturers don't make the parts anymore. So you literally cannot get service unless you have a backlog of parts that maybe you bought 20 years ago, who knows. And just general upgrades as well for efficiency, like was mentioned. So that's kind of what those categories cover.
So again, this is just a little bit more of a breakdown. When we had worked with the architect, I had said, now think 20 years out. Because I want to know realistically, how much time do we have on some of these projects? Are you telling us that we have to do everything right now, and then we'll have to repeat everything again in 20 years, or can we space it out over time? And as we worked with the architect, even though we have this to be determined, they put some placeholders in there for some of the funding, but they were saying that every couple years, this is in 5 years, you're talking $2 million to $2.5 million. So when you think of that initial amount of that $400,000 that I had mentioned, we locally have about $100,000 that we're already budgeting for projects each year. So when you look at that $400,000 amount that's coming from the bond to maintain, we're looking at the limiting rate increase, so it just kind of slides over. That added with that $100,000, that allows us to pay cash for our projects as we go, versus getting a bond up front. And I'll get into that in a few minutes. But this was just some of the big things right off the bat. And I know that Brian had mentioned a couple of these, the increasing our safety and security. We need key fobs. Right now, we're the only district around that has true keys to open our exterior doors. Most districts have something like this. This is a key fob where they're fobbing in. This is a key fob that works to get my copies out of the printer here at Kelvin, but it also gets me into the interior doors. And I will point out and show you, there is a spot in Millen Grove. We do technically have a secondary measure, but that puts someone in our vestibule. So they can get into the school and then they're stuck in the vestibule and then we buzz them in from there. Well, that's 2 layers. They're still getting into the building if we buzz them through there before they even get to the office. It's unlike what we have set up at Kelvin. So that is where I jump into this part here in the office space. The 2 sections at Kelvin Grove that need roof replacements within the next 5 years. And then in both schools, we really do need to look at just refreshing some of our classrooms, adding new paint, possibly looking at some floors that are original with tile that's been waxed and sealed over that we can no longer get the tile for, or it would mismatch. That looking at what they call this LVT, sorry, all these acronyms, luxury vinyl tile. And some of you may have seen this, it's like a waterproof tile. If you've looked at all for your home, luxury vinyl tile. What's nice about it, and I was actually just on a building tour prior to coming here in another school, the floor itself They had an old tile floor that was very loud when they were moving chairs and desks around on the second floor. They put in this LVT and it's super quiet now. When they're going to move around the furniture, it's not as loud. So if you've ever been in a classroom that's underneath one, and I'll laugh, Miss Ray's office is right below the music room that needs some definite buffer because those kids are stomping and playing instruments and you're hearing right through it. But that is something that we'd like to do over time. So I've got some pictures that I've added in here, and again, we'll see these on the tour. These are some of our entrances, and you can see here, all we have is just keys. We don't have anything that looks similar to this key fob. This is the door that's right inside the entrance, and I'm gonna jump next, right inside the entrance at Mill and Grove. So this is where our visitors get buzzed in. And right to the right here is this door that I just showed you. So there is a key fob, and then the set of stairs, or the set of doors upstairs is also locked now. So if someone gets into that hallway, they're stuck in this hallway. They can go up and down the stairs, they can't get into the hallway unless you have that key fob. So in essence, yes, we do have a somewhat safe and secure, but once they're in that vestibule, they're in the building, and who knows? They can still try and figure out how to get in from there. These are our gym doors. Those doors, yes, they are locked, but that again, someone could go right through that entrance. So what we're looking at doing is a much more safe and secure. This is an example of one of the projects the architect firm had done. You can see it's a similar resemblance. You've got your exterior doors here, then they built another set of doors. But you can see there on the side, there's a set of doors inside the vestibule that goes into the main office. So you're now into the office instead of coming into the building like we would have here. So this could either be built out on the exterior, built out on the interior is what we were thinking, and then you have an entrance into your office from there. The other part that I don't have a specific slide for, but as Brian had mentioned, the accessibility. Mill and Grove does not have an elevator. So anytime a student that may need or can't walk up and down the stairs, we're able to accommodate them, but think about it. What does that do to that child? And possibly that grade level, that class. They're staying on the first floor. Library comes down to that student and that class. Art comes down to that student and that class. Music comes downstairs to that student and that class. We look at it, and I know the board has had this on their strategic plan for years. The board wants an elevator. We have been writing grants. I was just notified the grant that we wrote for our new office was denied again. This is the third year in a row. We keep writing it. It's the COPS grant, it's a safety and security grant. We again did not receive that grant. And we even tried asking for a lot less. This time, with hopes, they would just help fund something with the project. Sorry, Ms. Garrett, I didn't tell you that yet, but you now know. So what this would do, if you look right here, one of the things we've talked with the architect already, and we know this is an upstairs because this is the gym, that we can look at putting an elevator in right here and not touch our stairwells. So we could put an elevator in, make our school ADA compliant, and if we put the elevator right here, it puts you right up on the second floor. So to us, that is a huge piece. We want kids to have accessibility to every part of our building, and since 1969, that has not been possible for any child that may not be able to go up and down those stairs. So that is a big piece that is on our radar. Roof replacement. So this is a picture of the top of the roof. I will tell you, the maintenance, the routine maintenance has really kept this in great shape. But the problem's starting to exist. When you fix one hole and one leak, guess what? Somewhere else, you get another leak. So it's like it diverts, I don't know what it does, but somehow when you fix one thing at a certain point, it starts causing other problems. The other part, this is a picture of the hallway in the junior high, you'll see in a few minutes. This was a great design, but guess what's missing? Well, I wish it rained right now because then you'd hear but it is so loud, the kids can barely hear in the classroom. So one of the things we've talked about right off the bat is not only do we need to do a roof replacement, but we need to look at insulation, sound insulation, so that it's quieter in those rooms. So when it is raining or it's windy, it is definitely quieter within those rooms. Refreshing the classrooms. We've got great classrooms. All of our furniture is brand new. All of this furniture we actually purchased over the last 2 years, so it was new last year, and that was all with our ESSER dollars. And the reason for it, specifically at Millen, we had tables for the kids. We had collaboration. With the whole pandemic, we had to separate kids apart. So we saw it as an opportunity. We're gonna get new furniture that's going to allow collaborative spaces for kids, but at the same time, if we need to move them apart, we move them apart. So every single one of our classrooms has brand new furniture. That is not something we would have to purchase. And all of that was purchased using our ESSER dollars, which was part of the pandemic relief funds. So this is our current classrooms. You can see this furniture looks very similar to what you see in this picture. What's different is our exterior. These are a lot of the same coat hooks that existed for many, 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 many years. We still have chalkboards in some of our classrooms. This is that storage space that Brian was talking about. Looking at how are we being creative on putting in storage space, giving kids their own spaces to put their items instead of everything touching. And that was one of the things we learned during the pandemic. We weren't supposed to have kids bringing in backpacks and letting their stuff touch. So that was hard for us because we didn't have cubbies. We don't have individual storage. We had just coat hooks. So this is just potential of what it could look like. Some of the learning spaces, here's just a carpet. We've got our regular tile floors. This is when you add carpet. You put in some storage space underneath the board. Put the carpet squares right into the carpet. These are things, right now, we just buy rugs. Well, over time, every couple years, each of those has to be replaced. This would be 4 or 5. This is a 4 or 5 classroom, mind you. This is chalkboards that they've turned into corkboards. So we've got a lot of bulletin board space. But looking at opening up the space using more TVs and projectors and becoming more digital. 21st century learning, adding couches into classrooms for kids to sit. This is our current junior high classroom, and you can see, look at the ceiling, look at the lights, all our new furniture. We've got cubbies and places, or not cubbies, I'm sorry. What do we call those? The corridor, it's connecting the two classes. We do call them cubbies.
Yep.
So what you can see here, this is a modernized version. You can see the floor is updated. Furniture is similar. Yes, they have mobile desks. We've got mobile desks. They've got the cubby rooms. We already have them. But it's updating the paint. The ceilings are still the same. So when you start looking at some of these things, it's not going to take a lot to really refresh and modernize. A lot of it's our paint and looking at possibilities. This wall right here, they started putting in movable walls where you could. A lot of these are now whiteboard surfaces as well. So when you close those off,